Imagine this, you're at a family reunion, surrounded by loved ones, laughing, sharing memories, but then, in the blink of an eye, everything you've worked for comes crashing down. That's exactly what happened to me, and I never saw it coming. I was married to the man I thought I loved. We had a good life, a comfortable life. But something changed. A choice I made, a decision I thought wouldn't matter, ended up shattering everything. This is the story of how I betrayed the one person who loved me the most. How I risked everything for a forbidden romance and the consequences that followed when it all unraveled. By the end of this video, you'll understand the depth of my mistake, and you won't believe how it all ended. I was at the family reunion with my husband, David. We'd been married for 5 years, and to the outside world, our life looked perfect, comfortable, stable, full of love. But the truth? It wasn't as perfect as it seemed. Over time, I began to feel like something was missing. We were stuck in a routine, the spark that once burned bright between us had faded. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself that it was just a phase. But the cracks were there, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping away. Then came Jake. David's coworker, a charming and confident man who was nothing like my husband. He wasn't just another guy at the office, Jake made me feel alive in ways I hadn't felt in years. We started off as friends, talking after work, sharing a laugh here and there. But before I knew it, the conversation shifted. The light-hearted moments became flirty glances, and what I thought was harmless turned into something far more dangerous. It was supposed to be just one kiss, one moment to feel desired again. But it wasn't. The chemistry between us was undeniable, and before I realized it, I was making excuses to spend more time with him. I told David I was meeting friends, staying late at work, or even going on errands when I was really meeting Jake. The lies piled up, each one easier than the last. Every time I saw Jake, it was like stepping into a world where nothing mattered except the two of us. Our secret meetings weren't just about sex though. There were quiet dinners in dimly lit restaurants, long conversations in the back of cars, and moments where I felt seen in a way that had been missing for so long. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional. Jake made me feel alive, exciting and wanted. Everything I thought I had lost with David, I found with him, but with every stolen kiss, every lie I told, the guilt started to weigh heavier. I knew I was playing with fire, but I couldn't stop. I convinced myself it was harmless. That I could control it, keep it a secret, and somehow protect the life I had built with David. But deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came out, and that day, at the family reunion, everything changed. The lies, the secrecy, the hidden moments I thought I could keep under wraps, they all came crashing down in a single, heart-stopping moment. It all started out as a normal family reunion. Laughter filled the air, people catching up, kids running around, and everything seemed so perfectly mundane. But for Jake and me, it was far from normal. We had been sneaking around for months, stealing moments whenever we could. The tension between us had been building for so long that we couldn't ignore it anymore. The attraction, the chemistry, it was overwhelming. It was like an itch we couldn't scratch, and every time we were in the same room, it felt like the pull between us grew stronger. The desire to be together, to feel each other, was something we couldn't hold back any longer. We had tried to control it, to keep it in check, but the craving was too intense. That afternoon, we both knew it was only a matter of time before we would act on it, so we sneaked away from the crowd. The house was large, with quiet, secluded rooms where no one would bother us. We found one of those spots, a small, empty room at the back of the house. It was supposed to be just a moment, a brief escape from the overwhelming tension that had been building between us. But the moment we were alone, everything changed. Our bodies couldn't resist each other. My hands were on him, and his lips were on mine. The world outside the room ceased to exist. There was nothing but Jake and me, the weight of everything we had done pushing us to a breaking point. We should have known better. But in that moment, we didn't care. I felt alive, reckless, and consumed by a desire I didn't know how to control. I told myself it was just this one time, just this one moment, and then we'd stop. But it didn't feel like just one time. It felt like the start of something dangerous and thrilling. What we didn't know was that David had noticed I was gone. He had been looking for me, probably wondering where I had disappeared to in the middle of the reunion. He must have felt something was off, maybe noticed that I wasn't where I said I'd be, and then, just like that, he found us. We didn't hear him at first. Lost in our own world, neither of us was paying attention to the sounds outside the room. But the second David stepped into that room, everything stopped. My heart dropped into my stomach. Jake froze. And there, standing in the doorway, was my husband, staring at us in disbelief. He hadn't expected this. No one could have. The man who had loved me, trusted me, was now watching the truth unfold in front of his eyes. The betrayal was laid bare in an instant, and there was nothing I could do to take it back. The room fell silent, the air thick with the weight of the moment. The craving I had tried to satisfy, the desire I couldn't resist, had cost me everything. David finally broke the silence, his voice shaking, raw with disbelief. "How could you?" His words cut through the stillness of the room, piercing my chest like a knife. The hurt in his eyes was unbearable. And I could barely hold myself together. "How long has this been going on?" he demanded, his voice thick with emotion, almost too quiet, as though he couldn't even process the enormity of what he had just seen. Jake, clearly just as shaken, tried to explain himself, his words stumbling out in an attempt to make sense of the impossible. But nothing he said mattered anymore. The damage was already done, the truth out in the open, and the love I had betrayed stood there, looking at me like a stranger. David didn't say anything more. He didn't need to. His silence spoke volumes, louder than any accusation ever could. His gaze lingered on me for a moment longer, and in that second, I saw the pain and devastation in his eyes, before he turned and walked away. I stood there, numb, unable to move, unable to stop him from leaving. The room felt cold. My heart felt heavier with every passing second. Left alone with Jake, I couldn't even look at him anymore. What had we done? What had I done? I had everything, David's love, our life together, the family we had built, and I threw it all away for what? A few stolen moments with Jake, a brief escape from a reality I should have cherished. But now, in that room, all I could see was the life I had destroyed in one selfish act. The guilt was suffocating, and I couldn't make sense of it. My heart ached for David, but I couldn't even find the words to explain myself. How could I explain this? How could I even face him after what I had done? But the hardest part, the one thing I couldn't escape, was the reality that David was gone from my life now. Not just in that moment, but maybe forever. The person I had betrayed, the person who had been everything to me, was slipping away, and I couldn't stop it. Our marriage, our future, the family we had built together, it was all in ruins. It wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was the destruction of everything that had once been real between us, everything I had once taken for granted. The silence in the room was unbearable. The shock on everyone's faces, the relatives who had witnessed everything, was almost too much to take in. They were all standing there, frozen, too stunned to speak. I could feel their eyes on me, but no one knew what to say. No one knew how to comfort me, because there was no comfort for this. No one knew how to undo what had been done. It was as if time itself had stopped, the weight of my actions pressing down on everyone in that room. The air was thick with tension, and for the first time, I realized just how much I had lost in a single moment. There was no going back from this. The secret was out, and nothing could fix the shattered trust that now stood between David and me. I had made my choices, and now I had to live with the consequences. I couldn't stop asking myself, why did I do it? What was I thinking when I crossed that line, when I betrayed the one person who had always been there for me? David had loved me unconditionally, trusted me, built a life with me. And yet, I let that slip away for something fleeting, something I now knew was never worth it. I had so many chances to stop, so many moments where I could have turned back, where I could have chosen the love I had with David over the dangerous path I was heading down. But I didn't. Instead, I let my cravings for something new, for excitement, blind me to the reality of what I stood to lose. I kept telling myself it wasn't a big deal, that I could control it, that I could keep my family intact while getting what I wanted on the side. But in the end, it wasn't just a mistake, it was a destruction of everything I held dear. Now, I was left with nothing but regret. The silence in the house was suffocating. David wouldn't even look at me. For days, he stayed distant and cold. I could feel the anger and hurt radiating off of him, and each time I tried to speak, he turned away. How do you fix something this broken? How do you rebuild trust after it's been shattered so completely? I kept asking myself if our marriage could survive this. Could I make it right? Could we somehow move past this and find our way back to the love we once shared? Or had I ruined everything beyond repair? More than anything, I wondered if I could ever forgive myself for what I had done. I was the one who had betrayed him, and now I had to face the consequences of my actions. So, what do you think? Is there any hope left for our marriage, or have I completely destroyed everything we built? Should David find it in his heart to forgive me, or is it time for me to face the consequences of my actions? I really want to hear your thoughts. Drop your opinions in the comments below if this story resonated with you, or if you know someone who could relate, share it with them. Sometimes, hearing a story like this can make us reflect on our own choices. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more real, raw stories like mine, stories that dive into the hard truths we all face.